Hello all and welcome. I'm joined today by Dr. Guido Minaya, CEO and Chief Learning Officer of Minaya Learning Global Solutions, and by Mark Odell, Procurement Specialist with the Florida Procurement Technical Assistance Center, PTAC, at Florida Gulf Coast University. Our podcast episode today focuses on the certifications offered by the Florida Office of Supplier Diversity, helping businesses understand and win government contracts as an essential service of PTAC. Stay tuned to learn more. Hello, Guido. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dario. It's a pleasure to be back on the show.
Hello, Dario. Nice to be here.
Mark, well, thanks so much for joining us today. We've been excited to have you on the show so we can learn a little bit more about supplier diversity and how the Florida office supports minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and veteran-owned businesses. But to start off, what does your role entail as a Florida state government contracting procurement specialist?
Yeah, my role at Florida Gulf Coast University is where we're housed. The Florida Procurement Technical Assistance Center is the acronym of PTAC. It's a collaboration, primarily funded through the Department of Defense, Office of Small Business Programs, as well as state and some local agencies that kind of blend in, and we're pleased to be housed and hosted at Florida Gulf Coast University. Our role is numerous, and this what we're talking on is one portion of our program today, which will be focusing on state of Florida certifications. But our roles will evolve from taking even the smallest companies in Southwest Florida. And we have a diverse base here doing government contracting. We've got companies that sell peanut butter to the jail. We've got companies that manufacture nuclear bomb parts. Everything in between here in Southwest Florida. And it's a great diverse array here in our 6-county region that I serve. Pleased to be here, but as we start with the clients that initially come in, someone's like, hey, I've been in business a few years. It's usually prerequisite to come to my office as they've gotten through the initial hump in learning curve of their small business and ready to evolve into the next steps. And they're considering government contracting. So we'll sit down and we'll start. It all starts with hello, right? We'll just do an initial evaluation. And sometimes we might, during an evaluation stage, might realize, hey, this might not fit into your business model. But most of the time it does. It's a lot of things that they do in the private sector translates into the public sector as well. I mean, whatever the private sector buys, the public sector buys as well. So they might as well buy it from someone, might as well be our small businesses here in Southwest Florida. So after we do an evaluation and give that a benchmark, then we'll start working them through the various stages of registrations. State of Florida is where we like to start initially, at least to let the state of Florida know, hey, yes, we have registered our business through SunBiz. We have a federal EIN. A few years later, hey, we're ready to start selling to you, state of Florida, and to our local municipalities here, the school districts, the cities, the counties, all of which do require their own registrations. But along the course of this, I also like to usually have them start with state of Florida in what's called My Florida Marketplace. That's where they announce to the world, yes, we're in business, whether we fix shoes or we sell peanut butter, whatever we do, we want to offer our services to the state of Florida. Registration simple, 20 minutes tops typically as we're walking through it. And I'm basically the Sherpa guide. We are technical assistants. We are here to teach, educate, train, provide one-on-one consulting, and provide vast numerous resources ahead of contracts and post-contract. But as we go through the process, we stumble through in My Florida Marketplace. They do the registration, and at the very end of registering to offer your services to the state of Florida, it will ask you, do you wish to seek certification in any of the following? Veteran-owned small business, minority-owned small business, woman-owned small business. And it's once they click one of those or all of them, it'll redirect them to Florida's Office of Supplier Diversity. And that's what we're here to discuss today.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Well, that's most helpful when we think about now the minority-owned, women-owned, and veteran-owned businesses. What does that next step look like in that certification process?
Exactly. And that's how exactly we like to line it up in manageable baby steps for our small businesses, because this is time that they're working on the business, not in the business. And that's difficult for them to do, especially when our small business here. They're hustling. They need to be efficient and get these done quickly. So that being said, once they've done that foundational step for My Florida Marketplace, which is the foundation, the other requirements are listed on their website, but basically 51% ownership by either veteran, minority, or woman, less than 200 employees, less than $5 million net assets. That's the primary basis, a few others. But this registration stuff, it's very, very simple. In case of a veteran-owned, just basically your discharge papers, DD 214, and or a service-disabled letter as well to be qualified for service-disabled veteran-owned small business. On the woman and minority side, it's just 6 additional steps and just documentations that we will have requests. It's one-off, like for example, birth certificate or passport, your certificate of domicile in a state, a handful of other items that get compiled, scanned, and submitted up to the Office of Supplier Diversity for review. And I jokingly say to all the clients, and typically about 5 to 7 days, you're going to send me an email with a copy of your certificate that's good for 2 years, by the way, the certificate, and say, thank you very much, and here it is. And they're overwhelmed. What is shocking, though, and let's put this out to our listeners out there, because this is good, and for you, Dr. Minaya, if we had to guess, I just pulled a few quick stats before today's podcast because I was curious. If we had to venture a guess, Dara, this goes to you too. If we had to guess, in Lee County, how many Hispanic-owned businesses are registered?
Certified and registered?
Yes.
I would say there's a lot that are in Lee County. The ones that are registered, I would say 1,400.
Dara?
I'd go a little bit lower, around 1,200.
What if I told you it was 53?
Wow.
Yeah. So again, we know there are a lot more companies registered to do business here, right, and have business tax receipts in Lee County to operate. But they're missing a couple key things that can help with set-asides. I mean, that is the importance of these. I like to use a twofold. One, it is a set-aside, and it's important to note that set-asides are goals, not mandates. In some cases, like our new project here at the City of Fort Myers that we talked about, those are pretty set in stone, but for the most part, they're guidelines and guides, not mandates. So if I'm in business or not business, I should, government entity, and we're saying, okay, this for this fiscal year, we're looking at so much percentage set aside for minority or woman-owned or veteran-owned, or in the federal space, 8A programs or historically underutilized business zones. They're watching those check marks and they want to fill them, not only with who's meets those criteria, but also who's best qualified for the job, obviously. Let's move on in our little surprise surveys here. How about the number of African-American businesses registered with the State of Florida Office of Supplier Diversity?
Well, given that the number is so low for Hispanic-owned firms, probably a little higher for African-American-owned firms, I'd say 78.
Daryl?
Yeah, say about 80.
Okay, 65. So there we go. And it's important to note on the minority side, woman's easy to figure out, veterans easy to figure out. What constitutes a minority, right? So how do they break that down? It's broken down in the state of Florida as Hispanic American, African American, Asian American, and Native American. So as we look at, just to continue on with those stats, because they are astounding. It's the Asian American is 12, Native American in, this is just again Lee County, 0. So a lot of the work we do, well, first and foremost, I'm remiss in not congratulating Dr. Minaya with his prestigious award for the Industry Appreciation Days of the Horizon Council for the Diversity and Inclusion Award. Again, congratulations very much on that.
Thank you.
And that's part of what we do in that committee, is we share and what's going on out there in the world so we can beat the drum. And, it's a lot of our work is out there in the world doing networking, marketing, different chambers, different organizations to make them aware of the features and benefits of these programs. I was in business for a long time. We don't want to leave any stones unturned in business.
Absolutely. And how would you say these certification programs help government agencies and even potentially private businesses that might look at someone who has a certification when it comes to vetting suppliers?
And everything we do is no cost, by the way. It's again, we're funded by federal and state agencies to provide our technical services at no cost to the small businesses in Southwest Florida. But the benefits first and foremost for the government agency, much easier to identify and find. And they have the certifications which they need. Now, another example is the private sector. And we discussed this briefly at the Diversity and Inclusion Committee meeting. It's not just the government agencies, be it Village of Estero up to Department of Defense, that are looking for these certifications. It's also larger private industry. Now, for example, Christmas time, an appointment with Enterprise Rent-A-Car's regional construction manager. And tagging along was their national CFO. He's probably down here to escape the cold of headquarters for a little while. And it's like, Mark, how do we find these companies? We're dusting off our playbook. We want to do what we say we're going to do in our mission statements and demonstrate to our shareholders, through environment, sustainability, and governance, that they've got shareholders to report to, that we are doing what we say we're going to do. I said, well, I brought them right to State of Florida's Office of Supplier Diversity database. Here's how we find them. What are we looking for? We need someone to do striping, construction, janitorial, management, outsourcing, freight, a whole multitude of opportunities out there. And that's just one private sector. In Lee County, we're seeing the same at, say, Lee Health or LCEC, a lot of our larger employers within the county as well.
Fantastic. Well, that's encouraging that these programs exist. A little shocking that we have such low numbers, but can you share, some success stories about how MBEs, WBEs, veteran-owned businesses, after they became certified here locally, how did they progress?
And again, we're focusing today on the state of Florida certifications,
surely.
which have bearing, within the municipalities here, or local ones in Southwest Florida, and at the state level. As we continue to graduate them through into the federal ones, as we'll see, 8A programs and joint venture, or economically disadvantaged, women-owned small business, a lot of different ones at the federal level to attain, and I assist with those. But on our smaller scale here for the state, sometimes just very simply having that as a marketing tool has seemed to be very effective. Not just that they have visibility, but there's a lot of networking opportunities now that we're post-COVID, and we're seeing procurement vendor fairs. We've got one in city of Fort Myers coming up, city of Cape Coral in late March. Be happy to provide details to your listeners at some point, and culminating in a larger one, April 14th, for the 5 counties procurement organization. All the procurement officers from the villages to the little cities to the state agencies and school districts will be at one place, at one point. In this case, it'll be North Collier Regional Park, reverse trade show, where all the procurers will be at the tables, and the small businesses, in this case, are the attendees. They come with their business cards, their capability statements, and introduce themselves. I hear over and over again from the procurers, we want to meet you. Come visit us. We will introduce you to our department heads. We're quite frankly tired of scouring databases to find people. So it is a useful tool, again, to be listed, but now to use that listing as a marketing tool, an advantage, and shake the tambourine a bit that, hey, we are out here. I've got my veteran-owned small business or certification or minority or woman-owned. Shake that tambourine, let them know you have it, and that will help secure future contracts. We've seen it time and time again.
Fantastic. And if you were to share, some words of wisdom that you would like everyone to really take note of, what would that be?
Well, education. That's what we're talking about here, right? That's why we're doing this today. It's education outreach. Your learning service and systems have proven themselves to be beneficial to countless people out there in the world. And the same thing here. It's embrace education. Take advantage of it. There's a lot of noise out there. It's finding the right training and the right education. What I will tell you, again, I run a monthly webinar series. It revolves, and we'll go through evaluation states and up through, post-contract management. We do all this foundational work to get a job or a contract. And now we get it. Oh my God, it's like catching the tiger by the tail, right? We got it. What do we do now? So helping to administer post facto is another integral service of PTAC. But in the near term, we got to walk before we can run. Everybody embrace education, get your foundation strong, That's your certifications, your registrations, a nice baseline to work from and be able to launch from.
Surely. Well, thank you. And maybe just a follow-up. When you look across the country, is your role a role that most counties across the country also have, or do states line it up a little differently?
Back where I came from years ago, that's why I was blessed to be here in this position, recruited down here at Florida Gulf Coast University a few years ago when my predecessor had retired. It was just based on, I wasn't even looking for this position. I didn't even know this position existed, honestly. It's a state by state. It's a federal program was Defense Logistics Agency, now Department of Defense, Office of Small Business Programs has taken over directly. It's offered at each state level, but some more than others embrace it. And we do that in synergy. In the state of Florida, we do it in synergy with the Small Business Development Center. So someone might come to me, hey, I heard your podcast with Dr. Minaya and Dario. I want to do government contracting. Well, wait a minute. What do our certifications look like? I can go behind the scenes. If you're registered with me, you're registered with the Small Business Development Center here in Southwest Florida too, who can assist with setting up the books properly, marketing strategies, a whole multitude of services that they offer is, on their side of the fence. So it's good to be in synergy. And with the new changes that Department of Defense has put out, they're actually using our state, what we do in Florida, as a model for the rest of the country. So it's
Fantastic.
what we take for granted is, what we think is commonplace is foreign to others throughout the country. So we're blessed to be here. And the way we run it is consistently had Florida in the top 5% for government contracting nationwide since 1985. So
Fantastic.
don't fix what's not broken, right? So
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your insights. Dario, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you both, Guido and Mark, for your insights on the certifications offered by Florida Office of Supplier Diversity. This wraps up our DE&I, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion podcast series. Stay tuned to learn more on our next upcoming series on women in leadership.